Hey, it's Mark here, and welcome to the next edition of the Employee Survival Guide, where I tell you, as always, what your employer does definitely not want you to know about, and a lot more.
Welcome to another episode of the Employee Survival Guide, produced by employment attorney Mark Carey.
Glad to be here for this one.
Yeah, but before we go any further into our analysis today, I really need to give you, the listener, a very clear, direct warning of the material we are covering.
Right. It is definitely heavy.
It is. Today's episode contains sexually graphic content, severe allegations of sexual assault, and the use of explicit racial slurs. So please take care while listening, and if this is a topic you need to step away from, we completely understand.
Yeah, it is an incredibly difficult topic, but analyzing these documents provides a really crucial look into the dark corners of corporate structure.
Exactly. So the document we have on the desk today is a 45-page legal complaint. It was filed in the Supreme Court of New York against JPMorgan Chase Co., which we'll just refer to as JPMC, and a specific executive director there named Lorna Hajdini.
Right.
And the plaintiff bringing this lawsuit is a man named Chirayu Rana.
Yes, and it is quite a read.
It really is. The mission today is to examine the anatomy of this lawsuit, to understand how extreme workplace power dynamics, systemic racial discrimination, and frankly, brutal institutional retaliation are alleged to have operated in one of the world's most prestigious financial institutions.
I mean, when you read through these pages, you see what the plaintiff's legal team paints as a systematic dismantling of an employee's autonomy.
Right.
It really forces you to rethink everything you assume about corporate safeguards, human resources, and just the concept of professional boundaries.
Definitely. And just to be completely clear, we are looking at this strictly through the lens of Rana's filing. We aren't taking sides. We're just exploring these allegations exactly as they are laid out in the court documents.
Exactly. We're just parsing the source material.
Right. So to really grasp the gravity of these claims, you have to put yourself in Chirayu Rana's shoes for a moment and look at his background. Because we aren't talking about a vulnerable entry-level employee who didn't know his way around an office.
Oh, not at all.
Right. In March 2024, Rana joined JPMC's leveraged finance group, which is often called LEFIN. He came in as a tenured, highly experienced investment banker.
Right. He was a seasoned pro.
Yeah. But before we get into what actually happened, for those of us not walking the floors of Wall Street, what exactly does a LEFIN team do? Like, why is this specific environment important to the story?
That is a really crucial piece of context. So leveraged finance is the division of an investment bank that provides funding for corporate mergers, acquisitions, and leveraged buyouts.
Okay.
We are talking about deals that involve massive amounts of debt and high-yield bonds. It is a notoriously high-stakes, high-stress, and highly lucrative corner of the financial world.
So a real pressure cooker.
It is intense.
Yeah.
And within that high-pressure environment, Rana was brought in as a top-tier player. I mean, the court filings detail that he was essentially a rainmaker.
And the numbers back that up, right? Like, the complaint claims he was the undisputed top performer on his newly formed team.
Yeah, he was outperforming everyone.
He was closing way more deals than his white vice president peers, Tom Goodrich and Cameron Gray. But more importantly, he was introducing the team to top-tier private equity sponsors.
Yes. And in this world, private equity sponsors are the golden geese. They're the firms buying up companies, and they need investment banks to finance those purchases.
Wow, okay.
So bringing in those relationships is incredibly valuable. Rana was apparently so skilled that managing directors Brandon Graffeo and John Wolter, the executives running the group, relied heavily on him.
Which is a big deal.
Huge. He was developing bespoke, highly complex financing solutions that were eventually presented directly to JPMC's CEO, Jamie Dimon.
Oh, wow. So he is literally structuring the deals that go to the very top of the corporate food chain.
Exactly.
But here's the dynamic you have to keep in mind as we move forward. Rana was the only person of color and the only person of Asian descent on this entire LEFIN team.
Right. He was the only one.
Then, in April 2024, Lorna Hajdini joins the group. She comes in as an executive director, which outranks a vice president, and she becomes Rana's direct supervisor.
Right.
And almost immediately, the complaint alleges she pulled him aside, telling him they need to stick together and promise to help him get promoted to executive director by the end of the year.
On the surface, if you're an employee hearing that, it sounds supportive. It sounds like a boss taking you under their wing.
Yeah, totally.
But according to the lawsuit, it quickly morphed into a mechanism of control. The documents suggest she was using that promise of career advancement to lock him into a psychological dynamic where he owed her.
Okay, let's unpack this, because we're constantly told that corporate America is a pure meritocracy. That if you just keep your head down, outwork everyone in the building, and deliver millions in value, your talent will be a shield.
Right. That's the myth.
It's like building a house of cards, where your actual foundation, your hard work, and your undeniable results doesn't matter at all if the person holding the deck decides to blow it down.
It is the ultimate illusion of meritocracy. What this complaint so vividly illustrates is that high performance in high-stakes finance often doesn't insulate you from abuse.
Wow.
In fact, it can actually make you a much more valuable target.
Wait, really? A target? Just because he's bringing in too much money?
Exactly. Think about the power dynamics. If you are a supervisor seeking to consolidate your own power and standing within a firm, capturing the top performer, the person generating the most value and the best relationships, gives you incredible leverage.
Oh, I see.
Rana wasn't protected by his success. His success made him an asset. The allegation is that Hajdini didn't just want to manage him, she wanted to own and control that asset for her own benefit.
And the escalation of that alleged control is genuinely terrifying. The narrative in the filing moves from a professional power dynamic into extreme, non-consensual sexual abuse and coercion with shocking speed.
Yeah, it really does.
It starts right in the office. In early May 2024, Hajdini allegedly dropped a pen, rubbed Rana's leg, and made a highly inappropriate, sexually explicit comment about him playing college basketball.
Yeah. From there, it escalates outside the office. She demands he join her in an Uber during a rainstorm, allegedly telling him, "I don't like the rain, but I do like getting wet."
And when Rana tried to maintain professional boundaries and declined her advances, the retaliation was immediate and explicit.
Just instant.
The complaint alleges she snapped at him, saying, "You know I'm still your boss, and what I say goes here at JPMC. Trust me, I own you."
Jeez.
A few days later, after he declined another invitation, the threats became unequivocally tied to his career. She allegedly told him, "If you don't fuck me soon, I'm going to ruin you. Never forget, I fucking own you."
I mean, that is a direct quid pro quo. She is alleged to have said, "If you don't fuck my brains out tonight, I'm going to sabotage your ED promotion."
It's horrific.
And the lawsuit details horrific physical assaults following these threats. Many of these assaults reportedly took place at a vacant apartment belonging to someone identified in the lawsuit only as witness one.
The complaint paints a devastating picture of one of these instances, where Rana was literally crying, begging her to stop. He pleaded, "Please don't make me do this. I'm exhausted. This isn't right."
It's so hard to read.
But the documents claim she ignored his pleas, mocked him, and forced him to engage in oral sex and intercourse.
The psychological toll of that kind of coercion is just unimaginable. And to ensure he felt completely trapped, the complaint alleges Hajdini constructed a terrifying level of surveillance around him.
Surveillance?
Yeah. She reportedly bragged to Rana that she knew every single move he made. She referenced his personal purchases, the specific restaurants he ate at, his private doctor visits, the prescription medications he was taking, and even the exact locations where he was docking his city bike.
Okay, in an era of keycards and corporate surveillance, how does a supervisor manage to spike a subordinate's drink and track his private bank records without triggering a massive internal alarm?
It sounds impossible, right?
I mean, checking a city bike location or medical records, how is that even technologically possible within a bank? And on top of that, the lawsuit alleges she admitted to spiking his drinks with Rohypnol, commonly known as roofies, and erection-enabling medications to facilitate these assaults.
What's fascinating here is how the very systems designed to protect a massive corporation can be weaponized by a bad actor operating inside it.
Okay, explain that.
To answer your question about the tracking, the complaint alleges Hajdini utilized JPMC's WDU system. WADU stands for Workforce Activity Data Utility.
Right.
It's an internal monitoring system banks use to track employee activity, ostensibly for compliance and security. But she allegedly paired that internal surveillance with his personal banking records because Rana was also a Chase customer.
Wait, so she was using his own employer's security apparatus against him?
Precisely. This wasn't just physical abuse. The complaint describes a total panoptic siege on Rana's autonomy. By demonstrating that she could see his private medical appointments and his credit card transactions, she was proving to him that there was nowhere he could hide. She was completely dismantling his sense of reality, his privacy, and his physical safety.
And as you read further into the environment surrounding this abuse, you realize why he felt he had absolutely no one to turn to. because Hajdini's alleged behavior didn't happen in isolation.
Not at all.
The lawsuit claims he routinely combined her sexual demands with horrific racial slurs. She allegedly called him her little Asian appetizer, her brown boy, and her curry in a hurry.
The documents state she even used these racial slurs during the physical assaults themselves.
That's odd.
But what is critical to understand about this lawsuit is that the racial hostility wasn't limited to just Lorna Hajdini. Rana's legal team alleges this was a systemic, deeply ingrained feature of the entire LevFin team culture from the top down.
Yeah, the level of bigotry outlined in the complaint is staggering. Managing Director Brandon Grafeo, one of the top guys in the group, allegedly stated openly that he only wanted to hire white Catholic and Christian males.
Yeah.
He reportedly told Hajdini that Rana was only hired because of a JPMC point system.
Let's pause on that point system comment for a second because it's vital to understanding corporate discrimination.
Right.
Essentially, Grafeo was allegedly reducing Rana's presence to a diversity metric. He was treating a highly skilled deal-closing banker as a mere headcount token used to satisfy corporate diversity and inclusion quotas.
And that toxic attitude trickled down to the entire team, right?
Absolutely.
The complaint details a September offsite event where Grafeo allegedly told Rana his seat was outside boy and mouthed the words brown boy to another colleague who just laughed.
Yeah.
They even referred to a random Asian man at a bar as Mr. Miyagi.
It creates an environment of total degradation. And remember those vice president peers, Tom Goodrich and Cameron Gray, the ones Rana was outperforming?
Yeah, the white guys.
The lawsuit claims Goodrich mocked the Juneteenth holiday, allegedly saying, "These darkies are allowed their own holiday now. I thought they already had MLK Day. How much more do they want?"
Unbelievable.
On another occasion, Goodrich allegedly referred to employees of color as knuckle draggers. And according to the complaint, management heard this and did absolutely nothing.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because you have to connect the dots. It sounds like the sexual harassment wasn't happening in a vacuum.
Oh, right.
It was fueled by a team culture that already viewed him as less than human. Is this a case of a rogue manager taking advantage of a subordinate, or is it a feature of the department's culture?
Well, based on the allegations, the complaint paints a picture of a culture working exactly as intended by its leadership. The racial degradation wasn't just casual bigotry, it was a psychological tool used to reinforce the power imbalance.
They can feel small.
Exactly. If you continually remind an employee of their subordinate status, if you label them a token hire, you strip them of the institutional standing they need to defend themselves.
You basically take away their voice before they even try to use it.
Exactly. Think about the psychology here. If everyone around you is calling you brown boy and treating you as a walking diversity statistic, you are being aggressively dehumanized.
Right.
When an environment dehumanizes someone, the psychological barrier to sexually assaulting them is drastically lowered. The racial hostility laid the groundwork. It enabled and insulated the sexual abuse.
And you can see how that systemic degradation directly impacted his actual career trajectory, too.
Definitely.
Despite closing the most deals and bringing in those crucial private equity sponsors, Rana's year-end performance rating was listed merely as on track.
Right. Just average.
Meanwhile, his white peers, who had fewer accomplishments, and one of whom allegedly made a critical lending error, received strong ratings.
Yeah.
Rana was given fewer support staff.
It's
When he requested to work remotely for a brief time to care for a sick family member, Grafeo and Wolter denied him. Yet the lawsuit points out that his white peers were allowed to work full-time from North Carolina, California, and Tennessee without issue.
So you have a scenario where his economic value is being extracted, but he is being denied the institutional rewards, flexibility, and respect that his white colleagues freely enjoy.
So Rana is trapped in this professional and personal nightmare. And eventually he decides he has to use the system to protect himself.
Which is what you're supposed to do.
Right.
Yeah.
On May 20, 2025, the complaint states he filed a formal written complaint through his legal counsel detailing the sexual assault and the systemic racial discrimination.
Yeah.
Now, if you're listening to this, you would naturally think that given the severity of these claims against a major financial institution, alarms would ring. You'd assume HR would swoop in, Hajdini would be immediately suspended, and a massive internal investigation would kick off to protect the bank from liability.
That is the textbook expectation of how human resources and corporate compliance should operate.
Exactly.
But the reality, according to the plaintiff's filing, was a swift, brutal, and coordinated campaign of retaliation.
Almost immediately. Within weeks of filing that complaint, Rana started receiving anonymous, racist, and threatening voicemails. Callers told him he wasn't welcome because he was colored foreign and looked like a bloody terrorist.
It's just wild.
They threatened him, calling him a snitch.
Mm.
On September 9, he and his family received text messages calling him a fucking brown piece of shit and threatening to call ICE to deport his family.
And while those anonymous threats are horrific, JPMC's alleged institutional response is perhaps the most glaring aspect of this entire lawsuit.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Instead of suspending the alleged abuser, Lorna Hajdini, the complaint states that JPMC placed the victim, Chirayu Rana, on involuntary administrative leave on June 6, 2025.
Wait, they punished him?
Yes. They completely cut off his access to all JPMC systems over his explicit objections.
Yes, HR. The department we are all told is there to help us. But here we see the mask completely slip. They isolated him from his clients, his emails, his evidence.
Yep.
And they didn't stop there. On June 30, 2025, JPMC inexplicably withheld more than half of his paycheck.
Right.
When he submitted formal data and privacy requests to figure out why his pay was suddenly cut and to uncover how his personal bank records were being accessed by his boss, JPMC's HR data privacy function simply refused to provide the documentation.
Just stonewalled him.
We are always told HR is there to protect the company. But how does protecting the company align with silencing the victim, cutting his pay, and leaving the alleged predator in charge?
This raises an important question regarding institutional complicity and the actual mechanics of corporate self-preservation.
Okay, how so?
When a massive company is faced with allegations of this magnitude, allegations involving senior executives, a culture of deep-seated bigotry, and criminal acts, protecting the company often translates to neutralizing the threat.
And in this case, the threat is the victim speaking out.
Exactly. By placing Rana on involuntary leave and cutting off his systems, they effectively severed his ability to communicate with his industry contacts. They cut him off from the market.
Wow.
By withholding his pay and delaying mediation for months, they engaged in what the complaint explicitly calls a deliberate tactic to starve him out economically.
Starve him out.
The corporate playbook here is simple. Make the fight so financially draining and professionally ruinous that the victim simply runs out of money and gives up.
But Rana didn't give up. So the alleged retaliation entered its final, most aggressive phase. The complaint describes this as a systematic, industry-wide effort to destroy his future employability in the entire financial sector.
Right, because remember, he's a highly skilled banker.
He tried to leave. The lawsuit states he had secured a final stage job offer with a private credit firm. Just to clarify, private credit is similar to private equity, but instead of buying companies, they lend money directly to them. It's a huge industry. So he has this offer. But suddenly, the interest just dries up. The complaint alleges Hajdini gave an aggressively negative reference, telling this new firm he wasn't qualified, effectively killing the job offer dead in its tracks.
And the lawsuit claims it went far beyond a passive bad reference. The complaint outlines a malicious campaign of what the law calls tortious interference.
That means what?
In conversational terms, tortious interference means intentionally damaging someone else's contractual or business relationships. It's a legal sabotage. JPMC personnel allegedly proactively reached out to at least a dozen different private equity funds, listed anonymously in the complaint as PE funds number 1 through 12.
Wait, to the exact same funds he used to work with?
Yes. And they allegedly told market participants that Rana had been fired for cause and that he was the one suing for sexual misconduct.
Are you kidding me?
No, they intentionally misrepresented the nature of his lawsuit to make him look radioactive to potential employers.
They completely flipped the narrative. The documents claim JPMC employees went to these funds and said Rana was a lazy introvert who lacked deal experience.
Right.
But it gets so much darker. JPMC employees allegedly projected Hajdini's own misconduct directly onto him, telling people in the whisper networks of Wall Street that Rana was the one engaging in infidelity and excessive drinking.
It's just staggering.
And to make sure the message landed, JPMC allegedly threatened to cut off their own lucrative banking business with these private equity funds if they dared to continue working with Rana. They effectively blacklisted him.
Yeah, full blacklist.
So what does this all mean? It's one thing to push someone out the door of your own bank. But it's another thing entirely to call every other building on the block and tell them to lock their doors against this guy. Why go to such extreme, allegedly defamatory lengths?
Because it represents the ultimate exertion of corporate power. Wall Street is entirely a relationship business. It runs on whisper networks and reputation.
Right.
By destroying his reputation, severing his long-standing industry ties, and projecting the abuser's erratic behavior onto him, the defendants weren't just reacting to a lawsuit. They were attempting to preemptively eliminate his credibility.
Oh, I see.
Think about the math here. If the entire industry believes he is a lazy, unstable liability who drinks excessively and was fired for cause, then his allegations of sexual assault and systemic racism will never be believed by the market.
Right. Who would believe him?
They were salting the earth so that no matter what happened inside a courtroom, his career was already dead.
It is a truly staggering scope of allegations. What we've looked at today is a legal complaint detailing how a top-tier banker, a man generating multi-million-dollar deals, allegedly faced a daily gauntlet of horrific sexual assault, deeply entrenched systemic racism, and corporate retaliation.
Yeah.
And when he finally tried to use the proper channels to speak up, the institution didn't just ignore him. They allegedly launched a coordinated scorched earth effort to completely erase his career and his credibility.
It is a stark, uncomfortable examination of modern workplace power dynamics. It shows how data surveillance can be weaponized against an employee, how diversity metrics can be twisted into tools of dehumanization, and how the blind instinct for institutional self-preservation can completely dismantle an individual's life.
It really does.
This isn't just Wall Street drama, it's a profound look at the mechanics of corporate control.
And that is exactly why this matters to you, the listener. Think about your own job for a second. If an employee who originates multi-million-dollar deals, who is undeniably valuable to the corporate bottom line, and who rubs shoulders with CEOs, can be rendered entirely powerless, surveilled, and silenced by the corporate machinery.
Right.
What does that say about the safety nets, or lack thereof, for the rest of us in our own workplaces?
It leaves you wondering just how thin the line really is between being a valued asset and a targeted liability.
It absolutely does. Thank you so much for joining us for this incredibly intense and important conversation. We highly encourage you to stay informed, know your rights, and keep asking the hard questions about the systems that govern our working lives. We will see you next time.
If you like the Employee Survival Guide, I'd really encourage you to leave a review. We try really hard to produce information to you that's informative, that's timely, that you can actually use and solve problems on your own and at your employment. So if you like to leave a review anywhere you listen to our podcast, please do so. And leave 5 stars, because anything less than 5 is really not as good, right? I'll keep it up. I'll keep the standards up. I'll keep the information flowing at you. If you'd like to send me an email and ask me a question, I'll actually review it and post it on there. You can send it to Carey at capclaw.com. That's capclaw.com.